Hi gang, and welcome to a Boros Winota Joiner of Forces deck tech video for Competitive Commander. You could actually almost call the deck Winota Goblin Snoop, because that is the combo that we are going for. It is actually a rather simple combo with a 1-card combo assembler, Goblin Recruiter for 2 mana only, a 1/1. When the Goblin Recruiter comes into play, search your library for any number of Goblin cards, reveal those cards to all players, shuffle your library, and then put those cards on top of your library in any order. So you can basically stack your entire Conspicuous Snoop Goblin combo. After that, you just need to draw Conspicuous Snoop somehow, and then play with the top card of your library revealed. You may cast Goblin spells from the top of your library, and as long as the top of your library is a Goblin card, Conspicuous Snoop has all its activated abilities of that card. And the card after Conspicuous Snoop is going to be Kiki Jiki, so now Conspicuous Snoop has the activated ability of that legendary Goblin. And you can target itself because create a token that's a copy of target a non-legendary creature you control, so you can actually target itself as long as Conspicuous Snoop isn't legendary, which it isn't. So you activate it and you create a token of Conspicuous Snoop that comes into play untapped, and you create infinite tokens. The last token you use targets the Goblin Recruiter to search your library again and put a new Goblin on top of your deck. And now you place Mog Fanatic on top of your library. That's gonna give all of your Conspicuous Snoop tokens the ability to sacrifice themselves to deal 1 damage, meaning you have infinite damage. And all that you really need is that 1 Goblin Recruiter to just assemble the entire combo. How hard can that really be? Not that hard actually. With the Boros color identities, we have access to both Imperial Recruiter and the Recruiter of the God, and we can also play Goblin Matron that can find any Goblin, including the Goblin Recruiter. And what is amazing here with Winota is that whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a human creature card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible until end of turn. Put the rest of the card on the bottom of your library in a random order. So whenever you attack with a non-human creature, any form of goblin, you might flip into either the Imperial Recruiter or the Recruiter of the Guard, and then you have it. So Winota is basically the engine for this deck. The plan is quite simple. Get a bunch of non-human creatures into play that's gonna have some interaction against your opponents that is disrupting your opponent's game plan and might help your game plan as well, further developing some mana in some sort. Then get your commander Winota into play, attack, and start accumulating a lot of value by flipping into human creatures that also have some stax effects or some tutor effects that's going to help you further down the road of your win con. Therefore, this is a very snowball deck that, if left unchecked, just takes over the game by accumulating more and more value. The key here is speed. And you really want to have a bunch of non-human creatures into play as fast as you can, attacking once you get your commander in play. Therefore, I actually think this deck could play both Ornithopter and Rograf, just because they are at 0 mana and they have some form of evasion. You can attack into an opponent that doesn't have any flyers, and Ornithopter is going to survive. The same thing with Rograf, having menace, attacking into an opponent that only have 1 blocker and is never going to get blocked and is always going to survive, accumulating some value each time they attack. But they're not auto-included, they're just options depending on how your metagame looks like and how much speed you want to have in your deck. One thing to remember is that this is a commander-centric deck, meaning that our game plan involves having Winota in play and accumulating value. If we don't have our Winota, games might be a little bit slow and we might fall behind. Therefore, your mulligans are really important so that you consistently have an early game Winota in play. I highly recommend the new card Jeweled Lotus that's gonna give you a turn 1 Winota. That's great. That's the perfect card for this deck. I also recommend Simian Spirit Guide. That is something you could just cast later in the game, just to have a secondary non-human attacker that could basically draw a card. You could view this as attack, look at the top 6, and put a non-human in play. That's a decent 3 mana cost 2/2 value engine, but you can also exile it from your hand to gain that 1 red mana to cast your Winota a little bit faster. But just imagine the dream of this god hand opening hand with a turn 1 Winota from Jewel Lotus and a land, together with Ornithopter and Rograf, and on turn 2 you get to attack with both of these 0 attackers and get 2 Winota triggers on turn 2. That will really get you starting, and from there you're really going to snowball. Because of that, you're obviously playing the auto-include Mana, Crypt and Chromox, Mox Diamond, Soldering and such, but also maybe you should consider Lion's Eye Diamond and even Rite of Flame. Rite of Flame is gonna help you burst out your commander richly faster, and sometimes it might be worth it to actually discard your entire hand just to get that Lion's Eye Diamond and Winota into play that super fast. If you're going for the Lion's Eye Diamond, you probably should try to empty your hand with a few non-human creatures first, and then just discard your entire hand, get your Winota in play, and then attack on the same turn with the creatures you've already prepared one turn earlier. Lion's Eye Diamond might seem a little bit weird. It's basically just a secondary Jewel Lotus, but sometimes getting that Winota into play that fast is just so important. And in general, once you get your commander in play and you start attacking and snowballing, everything will usually solve itself. Let's proceed. Let's talk about deck construction decisions. Now you're playing a meta stax deck. That means that you're building according to your metagame, according to your opponents. So when you're building this deck, or actually when you're starting to collect cards for this deck, you might have to collect a 200 card collection, because depending on your opponents, what is popular in your own play group, you might have to swap in and out different variations of hate bears that is going to deal with your opponents. Now these 3 are quite universal and pretty much always good. Dry Knight Magistrate is hurting a lot of opponents' commander casting, Underworld Breach, and a lot of various combos. Blood Moon is great versus these multicolored decks that are running around everywhere, and Alms Collector are good against the very common wheels people play, and etc. Don't go into battle without even Mind Sensor, and I also recommend Magos of the Moon are great variations to Blood Moon, and Thalia, Garden of Fairbane, is also pretty good versus the Spell Slinger decks. After that, you really want to increase the ratio of hate bears in this deck, and you might start to stretch towards the edge of what the Magic the Gathering collection actually offers. Still though, Leon Arbiter is a great anti-search, a smaller variation to Aven Mind Sensor, a little bit cheaper, but not flash. Then you have Thalia, Heretic Catcher, which is a great card that is slowing down your opponents, and Vryn Wingmare is quite good actually. As this is a hate bear deck, you really want to protect your hate pieces and also some of your combo creatures, and it's also good to protect Winota, so Mother of Runes is a great card for this deck. Glow Rider is a personal favorite of mine. By the way, Glow Rider is a human cleric, so you can flip into it. And the Goblin Crater Maker is a decent card that is able to remove opponent's creature and destroy artifacts. Another honorable mention is Spirit of the Labyrinth. We aren't drawing cards. Winota are putting creatures directly into play. That is not card draw, that is card production value gaining. So imagine having Spirit of the Labyrinth in play, forcing all of your opponents to play slowly while you are progressing your board state fine. Also, you have Linvala, Keeper of Silence, making it impossible for your opponents to activate their creatures. That's quite key sometimes. And Kataki is really a menace versus the Artifact decks and the Ursa decks. That is a key card to actually play if you're going up against a lot of Artifacts, Elisha and Ursa decks. Then we have to talk about Elish Norn. This is a really big and expensive hate bear that is killing all of your opponents' 2 toughness creatures, and that is really key and good sometimes, killing all their mana dorks and some combo creatures instantly. Also, this is creating a secondary win con in beatdown, and this is a deck that could really win in beatdown as you're accumulating a lot of creatures really fast and you're constantly going to combat and sometimes attacking with indestructible creatures. This is gonna help you overrun your opponents. I don't think Elish Norn is an auto-include, but I definitely think this is a card this deck could play depending on the meta game. Now, even though this is a creature-focused deck, you truly want to have some decent and good interactions, such as Sword to Plowshare to remove that creature you don't want to deal with for only 1 white mana, and Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast just to survive the counter wars and the pesky blue players. I would also like to suggest Abrade, a good spot removal versus creatures that can also destroy pesky artifacts like Grafdigger's Cage and Isochron Scepter. Now, if you want to see in more exact detail of how I put this deck together, in the description below of this video, you can see a link to my Moxfield deck list, where you can see exactly how I've assembled this deck. Also, whenever I make upgrades for this deck in the future, that link will also be updated. I don't view this deck as a dangerous deck people need to be afraid of. It's not really dominating the format, but it can truly pack a punch if everything goes according to its way. This is probably a deck for you if you like stacks and hate bears, enjoy going to combat, and like a little bit of casino. That's all I had to say. Now take care everyone, and thank you for watching. The king and his men stole the queen from her bed and bound her in her bones. The seas be ours, and by the powers where we will roam. Yo ho, all hands, hoist the colors high. He-ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die. Now some have died and some are alive, and others sail on the sea, with the keys to the cage and the devil to pay. We lay to fiddler's greed. Yo ho, haul together, hoist the colors high. He ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die.